ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. You either make excuses or you choose to level up. What amazing guests living the big ticket life. Woo! Woo! Brandon Brittingham.
Appreciate you having me here today, man.
It's that kind of discernment, that kind of focus, that kind of forward thinking that's so important if you're going to succeed in business today.
Jeff and I are like friends. We're real friends.
We are And so you unlock fortune and freedom without all the stress that normally comes along with it.
It all comes down to your why. Your business, why are you doing it? How is it going to change the world and what's it going to do for your family?
I want you to celebrate your success.
Talk about the struggle. But I promise you, the story is in your struggle.
They'll never be able to say that about me because people only see me working hard in anything that I'm doing whenever they see me.
Focus on your success and the success of those around you.
But being that constant in your community, good or bad, whether things are great in the community, bad in the community, be steady.
Unapologetically do business and life on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. What amazing guests living the big ticket life. And we discuss how they do it and the big ticket methods they use. The things that make your life successful so you do life and business on your terms.
In and of itself, the only limitations that we really have on ourselves is the ones that we allow to be put on ourselves. And most people don't look at it in that perspective.
There's nothing wrong with being humble, but there's also nothing wrong with stepping into your superpower and letting people know who you are.
Get ready to do life and business on your terms and truly live your big ticket life. All right. Eric Rogers, welcome to the Big Ticket Life Show. Happy to have you here, man. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah. Man, I love that quote. Well, that's not a quote. I love what Brandon Brittingham says there. Our friend, one of the amazing leaders inside the Apex Network, says there's nothing wrong with being humble, but there's also nothing wrong with stepping into your superpower. At least once a week, I get to hear that, remind myself of it. You're one of those folks that did that, I think.
Awesome.
We're going to talk about it today.
Absolutely.
We always get some information from our guests prior to the show. We don't just show up and play podcasts. We actually put a lot of time and effort into our time together. So you have a great show you listen to and watch. It's always good to watch the Big Ticket Life because we put it out on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. We live stream it and it goes out on audio. So you might hear some things if you're listening on audio. What the heck are these guys referencing? What was up on the screen? Check us out on YouTube. That would be the best place to subscribe at the Big Ticket Life. But in regards to stepping into your superpower, so you started something pretty cool. You had a fitness academy called Rogers Fitness Academy, pretty successful. 4 years later, so you're about 31 now. Is that right? Do I have the math?
I'm 29. I'm a little younger.
29. Okay, my bad.
Yeah, no, you're good. 3 years in the business, 4 years working on myself. Right.
Gotcha. So you start Fitness Academy out, have some success there. You're growing it, and then you seemingly step into this superpower. Tell us about that.
Yeah. The superpower my superpower has been God's grace. I wasn't able to do this on my own. I would say that my life it's an absolute miracle that I'm here today, being able to give value to anyone, because if you've heard my story, if anyone has looked into it or seen any of my content, they would know that 4 years ago, I was, on the verge of death, taking my own life because I lived a life of darkness and pain, and running from that pain. And there was just that moment in my life where I was at the bottom, at the very bottom, and I had no choice but to either end it or climb out of it. And, when your feet are at the foundation of everything we know, we finally have a place to step up in. And I decided, and by the grace of God, to step up and change my life. And I've put in about 4.5 years of hard work. I've built a multiple six-figure business. I've helped over 350 other entrepreneurs with their lives and achieving their goals. And I've been able to not only set an example for people, but teach others to set an example for their families, for the communities, for their employees, and the world as well. And really, it's stepping into that superpower that I love to teach. And man, I get to reflect on it every single morning. I was sitting down at the table this morning reading the Bible, and I cried because every once in a while I get to look back and realize that if it weren't for the moment of almost not being able to turn back, that moment where almost everything ended because of the place I put myself in, because of the actions that I was taking, I want to be here today.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. Appreciate you sharing that out. It's not easy for people to lead that way. You know, our world doesn't allow that until it boils over. You know, sadly, we're recording our episode on Tuesday. What's the date today? Tuesday, March
28th.
28th. Yeah. And, you know, we're a day removed from another tragic shooting incident down in Nashville, in the Nashville area.
It's horrible.
And it is horrible. I just got to think there was a person gripped in that sadness, in that hopelessness. Yeah. And so you were there, and, you know, what was it about that time where you had that decision to make to either sit eternally with it or climb out of it? Walk us through that.
Yeah, I got to a point in my life where I had lost everything. I mean, we could take it back all the way to the childhood and when things started to collapse on me, right? 7 years old, I was sexually molested by, an authority figure in my church. And as you can, which surprisingly has led me to the life I live now. I've always been very skeptical of leadership. I've always had a hard time trusting. And instead of sitting there and complaining about it, I decided to become the example, to become the leader that, you know, people can rely on, depend on, and look up to, and that I wouldn't lead them, you know, astray, or I wouldn't hurt them. But that moment, 7 years old, it changed everything. The way I look at the world, you know, my innocence was taken from me that day. And at 8 years old, you know, I had not told anybody this. I actually I didn't talk about what happened to me until last year on one of the biggest podcasts in the world, surprisingly. And I held that in, I repressed it, that pain, I pushed it down, and I didn't let it come to surface. And that's why I went through 16 years of addiction, you know, starting from the age of 8 to the age of 24. That's why I've had a hard time looking in the mirror throughout that time. That's why I've ruined every relationship. I've sabotaged every good thing in my life. And it really boiled down to, I had to lose everything so that I can no longer blame anyone else or my circumstances for what was going on. It was the moment in my life where I had no one to look at besides myself.
Right.
And I mean, at that point, there's two decisions. Like I said, you can sit there and be like, okay, I'm worthless. You know, I'm no good to this world. And, you know, that's been a thought. You know, I'm a monster. I've seen, I've been in some of the most evil situations that, you know, most people would never be able to make it out of. And because of that, in that moment, you realize, like, where's my place in this world? Where do I belong? And, you know, I was sitting on my bed and I had a gun in my mouth. I decided, like, this is it. I had no one to call, I had no one to help me. I had no one to cry out to. And that was the moment I realized, like, here, I'm done. I'm going to take my life. And I was sitting there with the gun in my mouth. I had a vision, and that vision was, you know, my wife being loved by another man, and my son calling another man
That's
dad.
powerful.
Yeah, it wasn't like the good vision that people have, like, you know,
Right.
a vision for my life. No, it was I'm going to be replaced, and they're going to be better off without me. And out of jealousy, resentment, In anger, I took that gun out of my mouth and I told myself that, and I don't know, am I allowed to cuss on here? Because it's one of my taglines.
Yeah.
One of my taglines is be that motherfucker. And I told myself at that moment that I was going to be that motherfucker. And so from that moment forward, with struggle, with failure, of course, I changed my life one step at a time. But like I said, it's a miracle. If I look back at it now, what got me here isn't what's going to get me to the next spot. You know, a lot of what I did was on my own. And a part of that was because I didn't have the support system. I didn't have the community. I didn't have the resources at that time. All I had was books, God, prayer, the gym. And so I really, I got to where I am, but it's not going to take me to where I got to go. Like, I still have things I have to work on. And one thing I've realized is that as a leader, if I'm not able to be led, if I'm not following someone, if I'm not in community, if I'm not being held accountable, then those same things that destroyed my life are going to be the same things that destroy my life later. And so it's an ongoing battle, brother. It's
well,
it's every day.
I mean, I understand that 100% because there's two people on this show that had that same start with their childhood and lost that innocence. I shared that on episode I did on my own a few weeks back in February, I guess it was. Same age too, man. 7 years old, family friend.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Same abuse. You know, for me, it really became all encompassing of what my youth was about. I didn't quite go down that same path you did. But we share that same start of the journey of struggle.
It's good to see you here, brother.
Yeah. Likewise. I mean, so good for you for like letting it go. I like to kind of say, you know, that kind of trauma. And I think I'll get your feedback on this. I cautioned when I like kind of shared that all out back in February. I look at that trauma, that abuse, whatever is in your past, right? I kind of look at it as baggage. And some days it's a nice little compact bag, and the day's flown, it's really good. You might even be able to put it down. And other days it's 100-pound rucksack with dirty, nasty old straps that like just cut into your shoulders, right? That's the way I look at it. And I tell people, look, you can't forget, because that's just not going to happen. But we can choose, we can focus on how to organize and stack all that stuff and where to put it. Any thoughts to expand on from that?
Yeah, man, I think the things that you keep to yourself are always going to be your biggest battle, and they're always going to hold you back, right? I believe that, you know, whether it's childhood trauma or, you know, trauma as an adult, our first purpose in life is to become who we always needed in our darkest times. And that really completes the healing circle. I believe truly that we're never going to be fully healed. I don't think that we're meant to. We're not perfect human beings, and we're never going to be. As long as we live on this earth, we're always going to have memories and struggles, but it's what shapes us. And instead of having it, you know, defeat us and hold us down and keep us isolated and keep us from growing and moving forward and being valuable to the world, we need to use those things to shape us and be a light onto others that are struggling. Because I mean, just so many people in this world they're not willing to talk about it. And for someone like me, tatted up, you know, big dude, father, like I'm a strong man. People see that in me. For me to speak up and talk about those things, I know how that affects other people that may have gone through those things, or may be going through them, or the kids may be going through them now. And that is our purpose in life. Like we weren't put on a planet by ourselves. We were put on a planet 8 billion people.
Yep.
Now we have internet.
Right. Yeah, we're all connected. You know, and we're connected in more ways than just the internet. There is that deeper, higher power of connection. You know, I didn't know we'd go down this path, but if you're game for it, I'll ask you a couple more questions. and throw my perspective out and get your feedback on it, because I think it'll be good for our listeners. So much like the luggage and baggage analogy, I think of what happened in my past, because there were others. There were others, and some of those other young men are no longer with us, because that sadness did take hold, and they committed suicide, unfortunately. So in a way, my belief is we're set upon and given the journey we're given for a reason, because we have the capacity to shoulder it. Even though it's terrible, even though the burden is heavy, we can take it on. And in a way, I believe that burden and strength given to me was so that a person that wouldn't be able to handle it didn't get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's a balance of good and bad in the world, you know?
Yeah.
If you could be the one to suffer so others can't, so others don't have to, so others have the tools to get through things, then so be it. I mean, what does that make you? That makes you chosen, right? It's a perspective shift that it takes you from victim to victor.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Love that. Victim to victor. Love that. Yeah, we are live on the show. So if you have any comments, obviously we're digging in deep to some stuff, but you can always reach out to us privately if you're more into that kind of a thing. We've got all of Eric's info to get a hold of him in the show notes. Obviously you can get a hold of me through the show notes as well. So he said something about there is a balance. There's a balance of good and there's a balance of evil. And I think the reason why our world is really hurting right now, why we constantly see struggle, is I think too many people that have the capacity to do good sit in complacency. They're like, well, that's not at my doorstep. That's not in my neighborhood. That's not in my church. That's not in my schools. And they just kind of are comfortable. Like I titled this episode, it was out of mediocrity, breaking free from mediocrity. Yeah. So let's kind of dig in there, like through that lens of good and evil. Like it just seems to me that Overton window constantly shifts to that bad side of things more and more and more, because too many people who have the capacity to do good, the capacity to lead, even in a small insular way, maybe it's on their street in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
They choose not to. Why do you think that is?
It's comfortable. You know, I think that as a man, we are obligated, just as God commanded us when he created man, he commanded us to do as he did. He commanded us to breathe life into people. He commanded us to create a flourishing environment for others and the world, right? And like whether that be business or building things or creating, we are called to create. And another thing is, like, we are called to bring order to chaos. Those are that is our inherent purpose in life. And for us to choose comfort, or us to be afraid of what others think, is it's a clear indication that our biggest idol is comfort. Our biggest idol is we fear man and not God. And that's the wrong audience to live by. I truly believe that, like, what the Bible says is, what can man do to you? Like, it's a blessing to be persecuted. It's a blessing to be, called out. You look at people like Andrew Tate or Abraham Lincoln or, Martin Luther King Jr. They all stood for good. And I know everyone's got, different opinions on Andrew Tate, but
you're allowed to say his name without having retribution come from me. And if anybody, you're allowed you are allowed in this world to speak a truth.
Yeah, exactly. And those people, the one thing they had in common was that they developed themselves to a point where they were no longer the problem. It's like the world is so focused on self-love that it's become self-obsession, right? Like they take it too far. And the truth is that, God he doesn't call us to love ourselves. He calls us to love the world and be a servant to others. Of course, you can't do that properly if you haven't, fixed some of the issues and deep-seated struggles that you struggle with, so that you can give your all. But I believe, and my mission is to empower men to develop themselves to a point where they are no longer the problem and they can give outwardly everything they got. Because truthfully, like, purpose comes from serving. Purpose comes from giving. Purpose doesn't come from getting, or what can I get out of this? It comes from, what can I do for you? And most people, the one thing they lack in life, and everyone feels this. I know everyone has felt this, and whether you've obtained it or not, especially men, you have been called to feel significant, respected, known, to have some authority. Yep. And guess what? Your self-centeredness, your willingness to only serve yourself is never going to get you that.
Yeah.
And so the thing that's missing is that your heart is not. It's not in a. Your heart isn't in a servant. It's not in a servant's place. It's in a, how can I serve myself? And the only way to fix that is by, getting your shit to a place where it's not. You got to get yourself out of the way. It's that simple, right?
Right. Yep. So, a lot of folks, because I've been around religion quite a bit. I've read the Bible back and forth, cover to cover. I think it's 4 times. Christianity is the only Abrahamic religion from, when I say that, I mean Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. It's actually the only religion that's rewritten itself with the New Testament, which I think is a very interesting perspective that not a lot of people, not a lot of people, I think, give credit for, is the right way to put it. It's the only religion that put faith and following truly within the hands of the follower. In other words, you can have that relationship with Christ, just you and Christ.
Yeah.
And it's not to talk down on the other religions, but it is the structure, because it did rewrite itself.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people might be a little uneasy. We're like 23 minutes in here. They might be a little uneasy with some of the stuff they've heard. Like, how could you be a servant and follow these beliefs, these religious beliefs, and be successful? How can you be a servant and be self-interested in your stature within those you need to lead?
Yeah.
So kind of turn that thought over to you and get your perspective on it.
Well, I could say this. The only reason why every single person watching this podcast knows who Jesus Christ is because he was the perfect example of who he wanted to see in this world. It's that simple. He didn't do advertisements. He didn't make content. Like, people followed him and wrote a book. He just lived it. And so the way he showed up and his message and his actions were perfectly aligned and with his morals. And that's why he was noticed. That's why people believed him. And, a big part of what we're doing with the Immortal Man is we're not only developing leaders, we're not only empowering men to take extreme ownership of their life so that they can build a legacy and lead with purpose, integrity, and faith, but we're also helping them stand on the platform that they built. We're also helping them build their personal brand and market the message, their morals, and get, show the world what it's like, right?
Yep. Show that goodness, right? Shine more light on that goodness.
Exactly. Because like you said before, like you said it differently, but the worst thing we could do for society is for a bunch of good men to stand around and do nothing. And especially as entrepreneurs, like we are the last people left that have the ability to build a platform and speak on it. And, they say that weak men create hard times. That may be true, but it doesn't have to be true.
Right.
And for us to sit here and let that cycle go through shows that we don't really care about anyone but ourselves. Like, we have, number one, an obligation, but we also have a chance to fix the next generation and the people that are watching us. The only way to do that is by living it, breathing it, practicing it day in and day out, which means that you have to change the character defects that you have, and you got to practice it every single day. Hardest thing to do in the world.
I mean, and be willing to openly share what those character defects, I think is the word you used.
Absolutely.
What those are. And I don't think Eric says that to say you're defective.
I'm defective.
Right. Like,
I'll be real about it. Yeah.
Right. I mean, defective, some people might read as a harder, harsher word, but it's a word. Take it for how you want. But if you can't show people why, like you shared in your bio, incarceration, drug abuse, homelessness, multiple suicide attempts. Like if you just leave the page of why that began out, people, I think, can begin to like really kind of question, well, where's this person coming from exactly? What do they have to be that off the rails about? Right.
Yeah. What qualifies him?
Yeah. And again, I when I went deep into these topics about my past back in February, and it was the episode called Space for Leadership. So you can look it up,
Okay.
For me, well, you can, and anybody watching, listening can too. I wasn't telling you what to do, but yes, if you're so inclined, but I shared what I did because I wanted people to understand where I've come from, the way maybe they've interacted with me over the years, where it has been a defective interaction. It hasn't been positive, and there's a reason why. And like one of the big things, like when their actions don't follow their words, man, that's a tough one for me that I still to this day deal with and work with, because for me, it was family setting, my family, my abuser's family, and another family around the holidays, as I recall it.
Right.
And the wife of my abuser says, "Is he molesting you?" to his daughter on the sofa. Now, there wasn't anything bad happening, but 5 other sets of ears of adults heard those words, and no one said anything. And so when words and actions don't meet, like that is not, and as I grew up and got older, that was like, that's not a way adults communicate to one another.
Yeah.
Like if you're just pestering your niece or nephew, your spouse or your sister wouldn't say, "Stop molesting them." Like that's not a language pattern people use. To me, that was a cry out for his wife amongst other adults to say, "There's something bad going on here, and I'm not strong enough to do it on my own."
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the fact is like, I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs watching this, right? I'm assuming that's probably your audience. There's probably more than that, but maybe sales people as well. Dude, if you decided to start a business, and then you have taken on the role of a leader, a protector, obviously a provider, and like it is your responsibility to step up and, number one, like hold people accountable, but to speak on truth and to, even if it hurts, even if it's uncomfortable, even if that person's going to hate you, even if it causes massive chaos, because you letting stuff go is feeding into all the problems that this world has. And, I don't care if you're an entrepreneur or not, like it is your obligation, is your duty to protect those that can't be protected. And, for you to sit around and say nothing and do nothing and twiddle your thumbs and focus on yourself and your business and your mission and not the good of the world, what kind of environment are you even leaving for your business to thrive? Right. Like, or for your clients to thrive or your family to thrive. Like we're trying to build something good, but in an environment that is not going to be able to house what good we're trying to create. All in all, I think that if you have been called in any way to do something more and you're not following that, you're not listening to it, then it's time to step up. It's time to, number one, be the example, but also to, do the hard things for yourself, for your family, and for the people around you.
Yep.
Because really, like when it comes to business, it's really what it's trust that you want to build, and people can smell the bullshit. They can smell it.
Yeah, 100%. You touched on something very profound that I think a lot of people forget. When you decide to open a business and be an entrepreneur, you are that servant for your customers, and you are that protector for your employees, for your vendor partners. When you establish these kinds of relationships, the level of responsibility is immense.
Yeah. And
that's not to share that out to like burden you and make you feel, if you're struggling and you're stressed out today, to make you feel even worse. It's a reality of things. And like anecdotally, I'll share something. So I went live on my personal Facebook maybe a week or so ago, smoked a cigar on my back porch. It was kind of a celebration because in Pennsylvania, it was early for that. It was, I think, March 16th. I can remember that date, but I don't know what today is, right? Go figure. So I'm smoking a cigar, and, people start tuning in, and, I later in the week was talking to a friend, and like, yeah, I saw your live. What were you bitching about this time? And I said, well, I wasn't bitching. Did you watch it? Like, no, but I know what you do when you go on live, just like back in 2020. Yeah, there it is. By the way, if you need a great podcast production team to have your back and complement your show and level it up, there it is right on the screen. Chris from Cast Ahead. His contact info is in the show notes. Just, I couldn't do what I do here on the show without him. There's no way I could be 65 episodes in without him and his team. So I can't sing his praises enough. But this was just me talking. I touched on a number of business and life topics. But their frame of reference went back to March of 2020, right? And we all know what happened March of 2020. Not going to say the C word because, believe it or not, these algorithms pick up live speech. I don't know if you knew this, but I've had examples happen on the number of shows that I do where it picks up. So I just say March of 2020. Well,
there we go.
My leadership in March of 2020 was not only for my family, but 7 other families, of which one was still recovering from a quintuple heart bypass surgery in their family, had a member. Wow. The other member, his wife was 38 or 37 weeks pregnant at that moment in time. Yeah. And then everybody else had families. And I'm watching businesses like mine be forced to shut. Well, big box businesses are allowed to remain open, selling what I sell, doing what I do, doing what all the other small businesses up and down Main Street do. And it was really offensive to me that it had the blessing of the state here in Pennsylvania. It was really bad. There was lists. Anytime government makes lists of people, it's bad. I don't find any good as a net result when that finally goes through the blender. It's never a good thing. And they fully endorse these big box locations. And when and people are like, well, what do you want them to do? I'm like, well, what do they do on Black Friday? They cordon off, they section off, they put railing out, they put fencing out, they bring in more staff, they move staff. There's any number of things they can do for crowd control. So there could be any number of things they could have done to only sell groceries and nothing else. But they didn't. Mm-hmm. And they got to win. And we were forced to lose. I don't mind losing, but damn it, I better be on the fucking playing field.
Straight up.
And
straight up.
And that really got me. So it was from that frame, and I was out, man. I mean, it's I can laugh at it now, but I was focused on that, and I think I made some change. I connected with a lot of great people. Really made people think on a number of topics. But man, it planted that seed of, well, when Jeff goes live, he's just griping. And, I can take that in and maybe in the future I need to share, all right, this is a positive one,
right.
Type that out or say it right up front. But that is the responsibility of being an entrepreneur, of being a leader, is you have to shoulder all of that. It is massive. So walk me through the framework of what you see as an immortal man.
So the immortal man is based off of what you leave behind, right? We talked about it earlier. Like, the only reason we know about Jesus is because he lived the perfect example. What a legacy, right? Like a lasting legacy that will never die. And it's not about the money, guys. Great. I love it. And I'm not saying that because I'm not a millionaire. I'm not a billionaire. I'm not saying that because I don't like money. I don't love money, but it's very resourceful. And of course, I want to set my family up for success. But that's not going to. That's not what we're working on here. What we're working on is all the things that cannot be taken from you. Like, and I've lost everything 3 times in my life, and I'm talking about everything but the clothes on my back, sleeping on the streets, no food, no one to call, no help. And the one thing that I learned is that no one can take away my beliefs. No one can take away who I am and what I'm willing to do in those moments. Right. Your true character is defined by who you are when everything falls apart, not when everything's going great. And so that's the question to ask yourself, is who is that? Right. Because in a matter of seconds, God could put you in a situation where all these things you find your worth in can disappear. Now what? Right.
Yep.
Right. How do you treat your kids? How do you treat your family? How do you treat all these people that you supposedly served? Are you still serving them? Right. Or are you now the person that needs to be served? Right. And so the immortal man is based off of the intangible, the things that you cannot grasp. But the thing that every man in the back of his head knows that he wants, and not every man, a lot of men are on like, hey, I just want to retire and live on a golf course and never talk to someone again. That's fine. We need people like that too. This isn't for you. Right. I work with them. Right. Go ahead.
There's golf coaches and retirement coaches for folks like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally cool with me. That's but for the men that have been called, the men that have a feeling, the men that know that there's something more for them, and they almost feel unfulfilled. They feel insignificant. They want people to hear them. They want to be seen. They want people to trust them. They want to be known as a high value man. Well, those are the people that we're taking in. We're not only developing them into a place where they are proud of themselves and can give themselves fully to others, but we're also giving them all the tools to create disruptive leadership in the marketplace and build a personal brand. What I mean by disruptive is we're breaking through mediocrity here, right? If you look at leadership in the world, if you look at our world leaders, even the people you may look up to, influencers, I'm telling you, that's mediocre leadership. A lot of them, right? A lot of them are. A lot of them say things they do differently. I mean, their beliefs aren't aligned with yours. I'm not talking about being like someone else or comparing yourself to others. I'm about helping you find out who that man that you were meant to be is, helping you become that person, and then sharing it with the world. Obviously, the byproduct of that, the know, like, trust factor of it is going to be a better business, being able to give more value to people, bringing in more sales, of course, so that you can keep building this vehicle so you can spread that message and help more people. Whether that be a product you sell or a service, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't have to be a coach. This is about those who are called for greatness. And then on top of that, we are backed by faith on this one. You don't have to be a Christian to join this. That's not what it's about. It's not about pushing Jesus down your throat. But, I would be a fool not to apply my beliefs in something that's been so helpful to me.
Right.
And whether you believe it or not, like, Jesus is a great example of the authentic man. and how we should live, act, and breathe and serve others.
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, it's guide rails, right?
Yeah.
It's guide rails on the path. It's a slack factor. It's an adjustment. It's an accountability.
Yeah.
That's how faith can be used. 100%. There, no doubt about it. We had a couple comments. Maybe Sonia Stone. Sonia, I'm not connected with you yet. I don't believe. I think you're coming in from YouTube. She's got nice words for you there, Eric. She applauds you for being
Thank you,
open.
Sonia.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for
they
tuning
do.
in. I think another
Thank you.
channel's maybe asking about us. Dascusian. I don't know if I'm saying that right. What's the channel about? Big Ticket Life's about doing life and business on your terms, and I bring on really cool guests, and we kind of touch on a number of subjects: business, life, faith, the past, the future. Talk about a lot of different things. So mostly focused around entrepreneurship and leadership, but there we go, answering that question. So
Awesome.
at any rate, as we look to wrap up our time together, you had touched on, shucks, that went right off the top of my head now that I went to those questions.
It'll come back.
Yeah, right. That's the fun and the bad of doing things live.
Absolutely.
But no, this is it. This was it. So when it comes to legacy, right? Because I'm big on this. This is one of the things that I'm focused on. Like my last name, Janakovo, right? Like you can't say it. I get it. It's an Ellis Island. It's an Ellis Island mix up back when they just like kind of were flying people through Ellis Island like a line at Disney Park, right? That second G got put in there, and my family's kind of had a very interesting story as time's gone on, and I really take it to heart that I want my family name to mean something that's going to extend through my sons and their relationships, their future marriages, and what I would hope would be their children. And for me, I want the name to mean integrity. I want the name to mean success. I want the name to mean impact for those around me.
Yeah.
That's the legacy path and journey that I'm on. So you shared what yours is. I mean, again, maybe we wrap up there. Like how do you view legacy, and why does that kind of get pushback today? Like, why are people, it seems that our society like views that as selfish, right?
They're tying it to money. I think when most people say legacy, they're speaking of generational wealth, which is a great way to fuck your kids up, by the way. Give them everything they need, everything they've ever wanted without having to work for it. You can do whatever you want. I'm just saying, like if you're going to do that, make sure you teach them discipline. You teach them discernment. You teach them how to say no, how to lead others. Like it's, to me, legacy is not only about the good things, because the Rodgers name is a lot. We have a bloodline of violence, of lust, of addiction, suicide, and the fact that my father was able to have me and bring me into the world is a miracle on its own, because both his parents killed themselves by the time he's 13. My dad lived on the streets. You know what I mean? My dad, 13 years old, escaped foster homes, went to juvie. He was that kid that was getting arrested for being a runaway, and he did the best he could. He's still alive. He struggles with things.
How old is your father?
I think he's like 63 right now. He's in his 60 to 65. I should know this, but yeah.
Gotcha.
My dad's. So if there's one thing that my dad passed on to me that's good, is discipline. It's discipline, man. Like the one thing that my dad did, and it's not because he told me this, and you guys could tell your kids this all you want. You could tell your clients this all you want, but until you're doing it consistently and you've created an identity around it, no one's going to believe you. No one's going to follow you. No one's going to even think that it's safe enough to do so unless you have paved the way and proven that it's possible, which may take years, right? I made a post about this, like just because you leveled up doesn't mean you should divorce your wife because she's slacking a little bit. Like sometimes it takes years, and it's your obligation to pave the way, show consistency to make them feel safe enough to actually believe you, because you probably have a track record of fucking promises up. So it's the same thing with your kids. My dad, I'm disciplined because he showed me through his actions what that looks like. Wake up 4 a.m. He'd go work out, then he'd ride his bike to like 30 miles to Folsom Prison. He'd work 16-hour shifts as a prison guard. He'd come home and he'd work on the house, and like he showed that to me. But he, like, one thing he did teach me that's not good. The thing that he passed on to me is like, how do we stay busy enough to push our pain down enough so we don't have to deal with it.
Don't have to deal with it. Yep.
Right. And
shove that big old bag in the corner, trip over it all the time, look at it all the time, but don't talk about it.
Exactly. The
Don't dare touch it.
Like the stoic lifestyle, which I believe in stoicism in certain situations, but you got to be real with yourself, bro.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, that stuff is foundational, and you can't build anything on a foundation of crumbling sand, right? Like, you just cannot do it.
Yeah.
You mix in some stuff with sand, you can make a foundation, right?
Right.
You can address it, but yeah, you can't just ignore it all the time. This has been a really great talk, really great time. I appreciate you sharing as much as you have. Obviously, we made a connection with at least one person, so that's very cool. Good thing is this stuff lives forever. We'll have it out there as soon as we end. It's out there on the internet, so that's good for anybody to catch and watch. I really appreciate you sharing as you have and leading as you are. It's good to have people of like mind, of like belief, like determination out there. So we appreciate you. How do people get in touch with you? I know you're kind of in a little change, focusing on the Immortal Man and really, really launching that and taking that forward as your legacy to help others. Sony's a fan. Keep doing what you're doing. God's got big plans for you. Yep.
Yeah. So the best way to get a hold of me right now, because we're launching the Immortal Man, and our first program, the Immortal Mission. The Immortal Man will be group coaching. We may have some one-on-one, we may have some huge group coaching, but we're doing small group coaching. The reason why is to get you in a circle of men that maybe struggle like you or are more successful in certain areas than you are. And really it's about that holding each other accountable and opening up to a group of men that, you're willing to tell some of your secrets to, bro. And it's, everything that stays there will stay there, but we have to talk about it. If you're an entrepreneur, right off the bat right now, like, this is something that changed my life substantially. Who are you to lead others if you're not willing to be led yourself? And, I would be skeptical to work with any leader or be led by any man that isn't willing to be led himself, right? The biggest lie you were ever told is that I got this. It's bullshit. No, you don't. No, you don't. Every failure comes from someone saying that, I don't want anyone to bear my problems or hear me complain. Well, like, guess what, bro? Like, there's 4 other men out there that are going to connect with you, that want to hear, that are actually going through similar things, and also have the tools and the knowledge to get you through it. So that's really where we're focused on. So hit me up on, like, Facebook is probably the best place to hit me. That's it's facebook.com/The Real Eric Rogers. And then Instagram is The Real Eric Rogers. Websites aren't up yet. So if you listen to this, I would really love to hear, come into my DMs and let me know what you thought. Love to connect. If you really want to talk on a personal note, hit me up on my Instagram. If you want to be pitched by my sales team, message me on Facebook. Just going to be real about that.
Yep. Very good. I like that you put that out there that way. That's good.
Yeah.
And listen,
Absolutely.
I mean, look, if you're somebody that's had these same struggles, understand leaders like Eric and myself, we share the way we share to carve that path of understanding that a lot of guys out there, and women for that fact, but I think for men in the leadership of self and in the leadership of healing past traumas, there's a big void right now. So whereas Eric's really stepping into that, carving that path, where I've stepped into that path, I'm not necessarily, what Eric's doing is great, and that's great. I'm not going down that road myself, but we are willing to step out into that fire, so to say. We're willing to step out into that path and carve it. I know my expectation is not for people to follow my lead exactly and share as openly and as freely as I have, and I don't think that is for you too. But your DMs are open. If you feel Absolutely. The need to get into a group like that, I would trust having Eric on the show now and being a connection with him in my network for a while now, that when he says that will be a private, confidential moment, it'll remain like that. It's not going to be a hidden camera live streaming it out, right? Like it's going to be a good, safe place for you to share that. And so just think about that kind of stuff, right? Because I know there's a lot of sadness in this world. And Eric's out there creating a place for you to come and get rid of that and kind of recreate yourself and have a lot more goodness in your life. So Eric, man, I appreciate you immensely.
Of course. Thank you, brother. Thank you for allowing me to bring value to your audience.
Yep. Well, thank you. Thanks for being on the show. So that's cool. We appreciate you. And we'll see everybody next week for another great episode on The Big Ticket Life. Take care. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of The Big Ticket Life. You've heard from another amazing guest living their own big ticket life, and now it's time to live yours. First, I'd love for you to take me up on my free gift to you. Claim your gift at gift.thebigticketlife.live. That's gift.thebigticketlife.live. See, all your life you've been told what is and what isn't possible by the loudest voices from the cheapest seats. It's time to finally do life and business on your terms. Sure, you've heard similar things, but without clarity on what can be done, it's easy to have your customers, employees, maybe even partners, and your spouse keep you from truly living a big ticket life. My big ticket methods shift you into that investor seat in your business, away from commodity and away from competition, into a market of one, so you can finally live your own big ticket life. So my gift to you is for you to book your discovery call today, where we'll uncover first the Chivo behaviors, those chief everything officer behaviors that hold you back, and why moving into the investor seat in your own business is critical. 2, we'll uncover the premium position that's up for grabs right now in your market that you're missing out on. And 3, which big ticket methodologies are just waiting to be dropped into your business to explode your sales and profits. So again, thanks for listening to this episode. I'd love for you to take action right now. Accept this gift. Book your call. Go to gift.thebigticketlife.live. Again, that's gift.thebigticketlife.live.